What if I told you that transforming your entire life doesn't require 10 different strategies, endless motivation, or some extreme overnight change, but just one single decision? One habit, one shift, one consistent action that quietly pulls everything else in the right direction. Because most people think success is complicated. They believe it's about doing everything at once, waking up at 5 a.m., working out daily, reading nonstop, eating perfectly, staying disciplined all the time. But that approach usually leads to burnout, frustration, and eventually giving up. The truth is much simpler and far more powerful. Real, lasting change often begins with just one habit. The right habit. A habit so impactful that it naturally triggers other positive changes without you forcing them. Let me explain this with a story. There was a guy named Tom. Nothing extraordinary about him at first glance. He was in his late 20s, had a stable job that paid the bills, and lived what most people would call an average life. He wasn't in bad shape, but he wasn't particularly fit either. He wasn't failing in life, but he wasn't truly thriving. Like many people, Tom had a habit he wasn't proud of. He smoked a few cigarettes every day, not excessively, but enough to know it wasn't good for him. It was one of those habits that quietly sits in the background of your life. Not dramatic enough to force immediate change, but harmful enough to hold you back over time. Then something shifted. Tom met someone. Her name was Janice, and from the moment they connected, there was something different. Their conversations flowed naturally, their personalities clicked, and for the first time in a while, Tom felt genuinely excited about where things could go. But Janice had one strong stance. She absolutely hated smoking. It wasn't negotiable for her. She made it clear that she didn't want that in her life. Now, for most people, this becomes a moment of conflict. You either defend your habits or you challenge them. And for Tom, this was a turning point. He cared about her, but more importantly, he started to realize something deeper. She wasn't just asking him to quit smoking. She was indirectly asking him to become a better version of himself. So he made a decision. Not halfway. Not, I'll try. He committed. Quitting wasn't easy, but it also wasn't impossible. It took time. It took effort. There were moments of struggle, moments where going back would have been easier. But he stayed consistent. And eventually, after about a year, he completely quit. But here's where things get interesting. Quitting smoking didn't just remove a bad habit, it created space for new ones. Tom started going to the gym. At first, casually, then consistently. He began to notice changes in his body, his energy levels, and even his confidence. He started paying more attention to what he ate. He picked up books and began reading regularly. His mindset shifted. He became more aware, more intentional. At work, people noticed the difference. His relationships improved. His focus sharpened. His performance increased. And for the first time in years, he earned a promotion. Now, was all of this because he suddenly became a different person overnight? No. It started with one habit, one decision. This is what researchers call a keystone habit. A habit that doesn't just improve one area of your life, but creates a ripple effect across everything else. It's like pulling one thread and watching the entire fabric shift. And today, you're going to understand three of the most powerful keystone habits you can build, habits that have the potential to completely reshape your life if you commit to even one of them. The first habit is reading. Now, I know reading doesn't sound exciting to everyone. For a lot of people, it feels slow, maybe even boring. But the impact it has on your life is anything but boring. Think about this. We spend years in school learning information that we rarely use in our daily lives. You might remember bits of history, formulas from math, or concepts from science, but how often do you actually apply those things in real-world situations? What most people truly need are practical skills: how to communicate effectively, how to manage money, how to build confidence, how to stay healthy, how to think clearly. And these are things that are rarely taught properly in traditional education. This is where reading becomes powerful. Books give you access to knowledge that directly applies to your life. You can learn from experts, from people who have already made mistakes, from individuals who have spent decades mastering a skill, and you get all of that condensed into a few hundred pages. When you start reading consistently, something subtle begins to happen. Your thinking changes. Your perspective expands. You begin to question assumptions you once believed were true. For example, many people grow up thinking that buying a car is always the best option. But once you start reading about finance and investing, you might discover alternative perspectives, ideas that challenge what you've always accepted as normal. And it doesn't stop there. If you read about communication, you'll start noticing how people interact. If you read about psychology, you'll become more aware of your own thoughts and behaviors. If you read about health, you'll naturally begin to make better choices. Reading doesn't just give you information, it rewires the way you see the world. And because of that, it quietly influences almost every decision you make. That's why it's one of the most powerful habits you can build. The second habit is meditation. Now, this is one of those habits that people often underestimate. It doesn't look impressive on the surface. You're just sitting there, doing nothing. But what's happening internally is incredibly powerful. Meditation trains your mind the same way exercise trains your body. Specifically, it strengthens your ability to control your attention, your emotions, and your impulses. In today's world, this is a superpower. We live in a constant state of distraction. Notifications, social media, endless content. It's becoming harder and harder to focus on one thing for an extended period of time. Meditation directly counters that. When you practice focusing your attention, whether it's on your breath, a sound, or a simple sensation, you're training your brain to stay present. And over time, that ability carries over into everything else you do. You'll find it easier to concentrate while working. You'll be less likely to get distracted when reading. You'll have more control over your reactions in stressful situations. And that last part is crucial. A lot of bad habits are driven by emotional impulses. Stress, boredom, frustration. These emotions often push us toward behaviors we later regret. But when you develop the ability to observe those emotions without immediately reacting to them, you create space. Space to choose a better response. Another benefit of meditation is the sense of calm and clarity it brings. Life starts to feel less overwhelming. You begin to notice things you previously ignored, the small details, the quiet moments, the simple beauty in everyday life. It's almost like reconnecting with a mindset you had as a child, where things felt more vivid, more meaningful. And perhaps most importantly, meditation strengthens your willpower. The more you practice staying focused and resisting distractions, the stronger that mental muscle becomes. And once your willpower improves, building other habits becomes significantly easier. The third habit is fitness. This includes any form of physical activity, going to the gym, running, playing sports, even simple bodyweight exercises. Fitness is powerful not just because it improves your physical health, but because of how closely it's tied to your lifestyle as a whole. When you start exercising regularly, you naturally become more aware of your body. You notice how different foods make you feel. You become more conscious of your energy levels. And because of that awareness, your diet often improves without you forcing it. You're less likely to eat junk food after putting in effort at the gym. You start making better choices, not out of obligation, but because it feels aligned with what you're trying to achieve. Fitness also has a direct impact on your mental state. It reduces stress, improves mood, and increases overall energy. Many people who feel constantly tired or unfocused find that regular exercise completely changes how they experience their day. When your body feels better, your mind follows. And when you feel better on a daily basis, everything becomes easier: working, learning, building relationships, staying consistent. That's what makes fitness such a powerful keystone habit. It doesn't just improve your health, it upgrades your entire baseline. Now, here's the most important part of all of this. You don't need to do all three at once. In fact, trying to do that is one of the biggest mistakes people make. We like to believe we're good at multitasking, but when it comes to building habits, splitting your focus usually leads to failure. You get overwhelmed, you lose consistency, and eventually, you stop altogether. Instead, choose one. Just one. Pick the habit that resonates with you the most right now. The one that feels achievable, but also meaningful. And commit to it fully. Your goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. You want to reach a point where this habit becomes automatic. where you no longer rely on motivation or discipline to do it. It simply becomes part of who you are. Because once that happens, everything changes. That one habit will start influencing other areas of your life. It will create momentum. It will make other positive habits feel easier, more natural, more sustainable. And over time, those small changes will compound into something much bigger than you expected. So take a moment and decide. Which habit are you going to commit to? Reading, meditation, or fitness? There's no perfect choice, only the one you're willing to stick with. And remember, you're not just building a habit. You're setting off a chain reaction that can reshape your entire life. Start small, stay consistent, and trust the process. Because one decision, repeated daily, has the power to change everything.